What's good? This is Kareem from DJBooth.net, and I'm here in the lab to give you guys a complete video rundown review of the new Pioneer XDJ-R1 all-in-one complete digital DJ mix station. So what we have here is a very versatile unit. It allows you to play back music from many different devices and in many different ways. For example, you have your front-loading CD slots so you can play and mix your CDs. You also have a USB port here, so that way you can plug in your flash drives and your hard drives, and you'll be able to play music back on both units using just your single flash drive. And you can also use this as a full-out MIDI controller, so you can just play with this when you plug it up to your computer through a USB jack on the back straight to your computer, and you can play it and use it with Virtual DJ LE, which comes bundled with the unit, or you can use it with any other DJ software of your choice because it's completely MIDI mappable. So it's very versatile. It's good for those who need a very versatile unit, and it's very similar to the release from last year from the Pioneer DJ division, which was the XDJ-AERO, which we also reviewed. It's very similar to this, but it was more consumer oriented in the way that it didn't have your front loading CD slots, and the Rekordbox and Remotebox interaction is a little bit different from this unit to that unit. We'll touch on that a little bit later on. But overall, you have a pretty nice construction. It's a mixture of both metal and plastic, mostly plastic around the casing, but you do have a nice metal top for your mixing console. It's plastic top for the rest of your actual decks, but the jog wheels themselves do have metal top on them as well. And everything does feel like it's pretty sturdy. It's a really heavy unit. It's a little bit bulky. That's probably my only minor gripe with the unit, is that the system is a little bit bulky. But if you want all of this functionality, you're going to have to pay the price of having a big and bulkier type unit, especially if you want the CD slots in the front as well. So it's very versatile, and overall the construction and build quality is pretty good. In order to set it up, it's pretty simple. We'll show you the inputs and outputs on the back, but all you have to do is plug in your speaker connections, plug in your headphone connection on the front, and then you can load in your CDs or load in your music through your USB. Or you can even plug this into your computer and load the drivers. If you have a Windows machine, it will be automatically read if you have a Mac. And all you have to do is plug it in, and you can get the Virtual DJ LE either from the Pioneer DJ website or supplied in the packaging. And you load that in, and you're basically ready to go. So setup is pretty simple, it's pretty easy, and it's really easy if you're just going to use your USB drives or your front-loading CD slots. So next up, we're going to take a look at both the rear and the front panel, and then we'll do an in-depth look at all of the features and functions of the R1. Okay, so first up, we'll take a look at the front of the unit. On the front, you have both your mini and your 1/4-inch headphone outputs, and you have your two front slot loading CD drives. Alright, so on the rear of the unit, we have your master outputs, your balanced, which are XLR. Then we also have a master RCA, which are unbalanced, and then a booth RCA. They both have their own volume adjustment knob on the front, which is a big plus. You have your microphone input. This is your 1/4-inch mic input. Then you also have an auxiliary input that has its own volume knob adjustment on the front. There is a 0 dB or a 12 dB amp. That way, if you're plugging in portable players such as iPhones or any other type of small portable device that may not be loud enough, you can amp it up here using this switch in order to bring it to the right volume level you need. Okay, next up, you have a full standalone mixer in this unit. So you have your phono line 2 and your phono line 1 RCA. And they both are phono line switchable, so you can use your record decks, or you can use your line level CD decks or whatever else you have that is a line level device. And you have your single ground post for your turntables. Next up, you have your USB connection here. This is for when you want to use this as a MIDI controller. And then you have your AC in. Okay everyone, so here it is, the extremely versatile Pioneer XDJ-R1. This is known as the wireless DJ system. We're not really going to show you guys the wireless part of it, but we can run it down right now. It's called Remotebox, and basically you're allowed to place this app on your iOS, iPhone, iPod Touch, iPads, or your Android devices, and you can actually get a visual representation of everything you see on the screen here. You'll actually see your faders, you see all of your effects, and you also see all of your cues. You can see everything that you need to see to perform your mixing functions wirelessly on Rekordbox. What you got to do to set it up is you simply go into the utility mode and you can set up your Wi-Fi, and the R1 will have its own wireless LAN indicator, and it has its own wireless LAN built inside of it, so you have your other devices connect here to this wireless LAN, and then you're ready to play with Rekordbox. Also on Rekordbox, it has this touch feature that allows you to use like an X and Y axis to combo your sound color effects and your beat effects using this XY axis. It's really cool, really nice and fun to use. But it works with your devices. It does not allow you to stream music from your device to your R1 to DJ with like the XDJ-AERO did, but in this time you're allowed to actually DJ with your device. On the XDJ-AERO, you're not allowed to actually DJ with your device. You don't actually see your different faders and all your different adjustments. You can actually stream your music to the device though, and you can also connect up to 4 different devices at a time to stream music to your XDJ-R1. You can't do that here with the R1. You can do that with the AERO. Okay, so on the R1 you actually have 4 different ways that you can play back your music. The first way is your CD mode. You press CD and then you place your CD in the slot, and you have 2 different slots. You're not like loading from one CD for both of your players or anything like that. 1 CD slot per side, and you can have a combination of different modes as well. But CD mode is self-explanatory. You can play your CDs. You can also go through your MP3 CDs. You can see all your information on the screen up here, and everything works really nicely in regular CD mode. You also have MIDI mode. When in MIDI mode, right now we're not connected, but you can connect a USB cable directly to your computer, and the whole device is MIDI mappable. And there's also some mappings available on the Pioneer DJ website, but you also come bundled with Virtual DJ LE. Everything works just as it should with Virtual DJ LE. No surprises or hiccups there. The jog wheels feel really nice, and they have a very low latency within the software, or with any other mode that you're using as well. Your third way of playing music back, and probably the most common, will be USB. With USB, you want to use the Rekordbox software supplied with your computer to analyze all of your music on your devices beforehand, and then you can connect your additional USB thumb drives or your hard drives to the library, and you sync what you want to sync, all of your hot cues and all of your BPM, sync all of your information, and then you bring your newly analyzed device with all analyzed tracks on it over here to your XDJ-R1, and you're ready to go. USB mode, you have 1 USB port that you're using to get your music from both decks. You have a USB stop button, so that way you can stop the USB playback immediately at the push of the button. Okay, so next up we'll run down the mixing portion of the unit, and at the bottom everything is very, very similar to the XDJ-R1. There are a couple of differences, but in terms of feel and usability, it feels just like a DJM 250 fader here, so it's really nice and crisp. It's pretty accurate. You also have your line faders, which are a little bit more resistant. That way you can get a nice accurate mix with them. Next up you have your sound color effect knobs, which can either be filters, high pass and low pass filters, or it can be a crush effect, a pitch effect, or a noise effect. So I'll give you a quick example. Between psychotic and iconic, somewhere between I want it and I got it, somewhere between I'm sober and I'm looking, somewhere between a mistress and commitment. So you have a quick example of your sound color effects. The sound color effects are usually found on your higher priced Pioneer DJM club standard mixers, and it's really cool to see it here on the XDJ-R1. The XDJ-AERO does not have those sound color effects, so it's a really nice touch to have it here on this unit. Next up, you have your 3-band full kill EQs. These knobs do all have a metal post underneath, so they're very, very strong. Then you have your gain knobs up at the top. Oh yeah, and the fourth way that you can play music with this unit is through your standalone mixer mode. You use these switches here at the top to select either deck 1 using your onboard deck functions, or your external deck phono line 1 or phono line 2. So that way you can use your external CD decks or your turntables. Next up, you have your headphone Q section on the left. This way you can change your master volume level of your headphones, and then you can mix between Q or master. So whatever you have queued up in your headphones or your master, you can fade it using this knob here. Next up, you have your microphone controls all the way to the right. Mic on off button, and then you have your low and high EQ and your mic level knob here at the top. Next up, you have your aux on off and your aux level knob here. These are used to control your aux input on the rear. You can turn it off and on, and you can control the volume separately. Next up, you have your master and your booth separate volume knobs. This is very, very big. The XDJ-AERO did not have the booth monitor volume knob. It does not have any booth outputs, but the XDJ-R1 is more aimed towards your mobile DJ user. Therefore, they're here and they work very nicely. Okay, next up we'll take a look at the decks. And this is just one of the decks. They are exactly the same. They're not mirrored as they are on some decks. It's just like having two different CDJ units right there at your fingertips. It's not like they change the tempo to the other side like some units do, but I don't really have any particular preference about it. This works just as well as any other. So we'll start from the top and work our way down. At the top we have this nice screen. The XDJ-AERO had like a more backlit looking screen to it. Again, more consumer flashy. This is more business here. It's more like the CDJ-850, and you have your different navigation for your encoder here knob to go through all of your different songs and tracks. Then you have your back button in order to go back to the last area in your device. Then you have your info utility menu, and then you have a time button which allows you to change the readout from time remaining to time elapsed. For the info utility, we go into the utility. I'll show you what you can change. You can change your wireless LAN info. You can change your wireless LAN settings. You can change different things in your mixer levels, your AQ level, your sample volume level. You can change in here because you have a sampler on board. Crossfader start options, touch sensitivity for your jog wheel, and you got a demo mode, auto standby mode, and it also shows you your version. Next up, you have your eject disk button all the way up at the top. Then you have your on-off standby button here to turn your unit on and off. USB selector, CD selector, and MIDI selector buttons. Next up, you have your effects section. Just like the XDJ-R1, you have the same effects here. You have your trans, your flanger, your echo, your roll. You have a level depth knob here on the right, and your beat time difference knob here on the left. When you change these parameters on this knob, you get to see what your loop and your beat counter is right here on the display. So, quick demo of the effects.
But I stay down, girl, I always stay down. Yet I never lay down. Promise to break everybody out before I break down. Everyone just wait now. So much nothing they can say. They change. What more can I say?
Next up, you have your auto beat loop. This allows you to engage a loop as long as your tracks are analyzed properly in Rekordbox. Your loops will be nice and on point. They're all auto loops, and you can change your loop count by turning the selector knob. You see your loop count up here on the screen, and when you're ready to engage a loop, you just press the button. When you're ready to come out the loop, you press the button again, and you can change the length of the loop on the fly by turning the knob while you're even in the loop. Next up, you have your track search buttons, left and right, so that way you can go through the tracks on your device. Shift button, cue, and play and pause, very familiar to Pioneer users. They have a nice feel to them, just like all your other Pioneer CDJs and Pioneer gear. You have a tap button here, that way you can get your BPM just right. If there is an error within Rekordbox, or if you didn't analyze your music, you can actually tap in your BPM, so some of the functions will still work. You have your vinyl mode knob, which changes the way that the vinyl actually, or the jog wheel actually reacts.
You might feel like nothing.
High resolution jog wheels, nice metal top surface with a nice LED ring around the outside. You also have plastic sides, so that way you can nudge it when you're in vinyl mode. You can nudge it using the sides, and you can scratch using the top. And when you're in jog mode,
smoking on the low, I still been plotting on the low, steaming on the low.
So very high resolution jog wheels overall. And that brings us to our next section. The XDJ-AERO did not have hot cues at first. Now we have hot cues right here on the XDJ-R1, and you also have a 4-beat sampler, so you can turn that into sampler mode, and these then turn into sample banks. So for hot cues, easy to set.
What more can I say now? You might feel like nothing was the same. I still been drinking on the low, mobbing on the low, fucking on the low, drinking on the low, mobbing on the low, fucking on the low, smoking on the low. I still been plotting on the low,
sample mode,
screaming on the low. Farthest thing from perfect, like everyone I know. I just been drinking on the low, perfect. Like farthest thing from perfect, farthest thing from perfect.
So your samples save right here, and they save to your device.
Farthest thing from perfect, like farthest thing from perfect.
And they actually will be in a loop, depending on how you have your auto loop bar set when you hold it down.
Farthest thing from perfect.
And you can change your sampler volume in the utility menu as we showed you earlier. In order to delete your samples and your hot cues, you just go look at the appropriately highlighted sample.
Farthest thing from perfect.
And you press shift, and now it's gone. Last but not least, you have your master and your sync button. Use them if you want to use them, but if you don't use them. Just set one deck to master, and then you can press sync and sync on the other deck, and they will be perfectly on beat. Next up, you have your pitch tempo slider. It's rather short, but it's pretty accurate. You can change the tempo between plus minus 6, 10, 16, or 100. So just by pressing this button here. And then you have your master tempo button here as well, so you can keep your tempo right on even when you're adjusting your tempo. So in conclusion, the Pioneer XDJ-R1 is just simply a very, very versatile unit. It's going to be really good for mobile DJs, because mobile DJs oftentimes have many different formats that they want to use when they're going to play their sets. They might have a CD from someone, they might have a flash drive, or they might want to use this as a MIDI controller, all in one breath. You can have one side of your controller be a MIDI controller, and the other side can play from CD. So it's very versatile in that regard. The build quality is there. You also have that wireless Rekordbox app that you can use with your iOS devices or your Android devices that's running that app. And you can completely DJ wirelessly from wherever you are, as long as you are in sync with the Wi-Fi signal or the wireless LAN signal that the R1 emits. So you have a lot of cool features and functions. You also have your hot cues, you also have your samplers, and you also have your onboard effects, a very full feature set. You have a nice LED that's easy to read with all of your information on board. And you also have the CD slots on here that the XDJ-AERO didn't. So if you need that functionality, it's also there for you as well. Also on this unit, you have that separate master and booth volume level control, and you also have your aux volume level control. So you have a lot of different controls, so that way you can have your monitoring and you can have your live at the same time in the master while you're doing your performances. On the downside, the only real gripe that I can find with this unit was that it was a little bit bulky, a little bit heavy on the bigger side, but if you want all this versatility and you want to be able to play CDs and you want to be able to do MIDI and everything else that this can do, then you're going to need probably a size unit that is this size. But it's bigger than most controllers, and it's definitely heavier than most of your average DJ controllers out there on the market today. So for more on the full written review, you guys can head on over to www.djbooth.net/DJS, or you can click on the link at the top of this video description. Thanks for watching.